The morning it happened was the kind of quiet that only comes with years of living slow and careful. The cabin sat just where it always had, tucked between tall pines, the gravel driveway still damp from last night's rain. I was easing into retirement the way I'd planned, coffee steaming in my hands, birds arguing in the trees, and nothing on the schedule except maybe stacking a little firewood. At my age, peace isn't a luxury. It's something you've earned. That peace was broken when I noticed movement near the edge of my yard. At first, I assumed it was a hiker who'd wandered a little too close. Then I saw the clipboard. She was standing near my shed, taking pictures like she was on an inspection tour. I didn't recognize her from my immediate neighbors, but I knew the type. Every community seems to have one. The self-appointed rule enforcer. The person who believes authority comes from confidence rather than permission. I walked closer and asked politely if I could help her. She didn't apologize for being on my land. She didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, she informed me she was with the HOA and had concerns about my property. Firewood placement, structure distance, yard appearance. She rattled them off like she'd rehearsed. When I asked why she was in my yard, without asking, she waved her hand and said HOA inspections didn't require notice. That was the moment my stomach tightened. I've lived long enough to recognize when someone is bluffing. I told her calmly that this was private property and she needed to leave. She smiled thinly and said I'd be hearing from the board. Then she walked back toward the road, still snapping pictures over her shoulder. The next day, a notice appeared taped to my cabin door. Violations listed. Fines threatened. The tone wasn't friendly. It was official enough to worry someone who didn't know better. I read it twice, then a third time, and something didn't sit right. I'd checked my deed years ago. The cabin was near the HOA boundary, but not inside it. Still, paper can be intimidating, especially when it's written to sound authoritative. I spent that evening restless, thinking about how many people my age just pay these fines to avoid stress. The next morning, I decided stress was worse than standing up for myself. I called the county sheriff's office and explained the situation. They suggested a deputy stop by to take a report, since entering private property without permission could be an issue. The deputy arrived that afternoon, boots crunching on the gravel, friendly but professional. I showed him the notice, explained what happened, and pointed out where she'd been standing. He asked if I'd given permission for her to enter. I hadn't. He nodded, took notes, and said he'd reviewed the situation, including the HOA's actual authority. A few days passed. Then she returned. This time she stayed near the road but made sure I saw her, clipboard held like a badge. She called out that fines were moving forward and compliance was expected. I told her the deputy was reviewing her actions. The change in her expression was instant. She didn't say much after that, just got in her car and left. When the deputy came back, he brought clarity and relief. He confirmed that my cabin was outside the HOA's jurisdiction and that even if it weren't, HOA members couldn't enter private property without consent. He said he'd spoken to her directly and advised her to stop. Any further entry, he explained, could be considered trespassing. Word traveled faster than I expected. Neighbors I'd only waved to before started stopping by. Some thanked me quietly. Others shared their own stories of surprise inspections and intimidating notices. Most were retirees, like me, folks who just wanted to enjoy the years they'd worked hard for without being monitored. After that, things changed. Notices stopped appearing. No more clipboards, no more slow drives past my cabin. The woods returned to being just woods, not a backdrop for someone else's power trip. I found myself enjoying the mornings again, listening to the wind through the trees, instead of wondering who might step onto my land next. A few weeks later, I stacked firewood right where it had always been. I fixed a loose board on the shed and left it at that. No one bothered me. The deputy waved when he drove past one afternoon, and that simple gesture meant more than he probably realized. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't let frustration turn into anger. Calm questions and the right phone call did more than shouting ever could. At our age, we've learned that dignity and patience are powerful tools. Standing your ground doesn't mean making enemies. Sometimes it just means reminding people where their authority ends. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe so more folks can hear stories like this. And tell me in the comments where are you watching from today.